an assistant planner for Jefferson County for the last 2 years, and I was serving as staff for the UGA task force. And just like to give you a brief rundown of how we got here, I guess, and why the UGA matters and what the difference is between what is north of this area and a lot of the area. It's really starting to. It was a boom town in the turn of the century. There's a lumber mill, there's the alcohol plant coming up, and it's all designated based on what was in existence in July 1st, 1990. And the sizes and intensities of uses are limited under this rural designation. So what we've been working on, and when the county went through and did the initial planning under growth management, there's countywide planning policies that state that this area is considered characterized by urban growth, which is the criteria under growth management for establishing a non-municipal UGA, which is what our intended policy is. There's a direction further from the comp plan from the Citizen Task Force that was assembled in 2004, gave further direction on how to develop this area.
Kyle, hold the mic a little higher.
Oh, sorry.
So you've been on your tape.
Sorry about that. I know most people don't like the microphones, but it's also pretty important because the microphone on the camera doesn't pick up real well, so we've got it next to a speaker. But the purpose of this meeting is just really to have everyone in the UGA, in one spot at one time and talk about some of the issues that are affecting you and your business or your home or the way you live. So I'd like to start off. I'd like to call Ray Serburn up since he was on the front page of the Leader today to talk a little bit about the county library and the expansion plan that they have. And maybe before, should we go through and introduce everyone?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Is that better?
I'm Joe Lovato, and I've got the property at Hadlock Building Supply, and very concerned about what will be done so that we can expand. And we are going to expand across the street with the updated state-of-the-art Rena Center, and there's some other things we'd like to have done. The problem being right now is that we're being forced to put in a septic system that's costing money, just like putting a hole in the ground and filling back up. So I hope to get the sewer system in there as soon as possible. They're relevant to the cost. It'll just save us a lot of property that now is not usable and can be usable very shortly.
I'm Karen Russell with the Valley Tavern. Chuck will do the speaking for me.
And I'm Chuck Russell. I'm anxious and have been for 20-some years to get the sewer system going in our area. We need it not only for our business and other businesses around us, but for affordable housing. It's just essential.
Duke Scholl, live in Hadlock, have 4 or 5 businesses in Hadlock, served on the latest task committee and several others before that, just trying to make something go in Hadlock.
I'm Michael Durr. I'm the Assistant Director of Real Estate for QFC. I live in Bellevue, and obviously we have a vital interest in how this is going to proceed and what the vision for Hadlock and Irondale is, and will that define the UGA, or will the UGA define the future Irondale Hadlock? I think that's an important question.
Larry Crockett, I'm the director of the Port Townsend. We have facilities down in Lower Hadlock, boat ramps, docks, etc. And I guess we're just supposed to be introducing ourselves right now. We're going to talk later. Okay.
Christina Pavarnik, consultant for Jefferson County in Public Outreach.
Jim Pavarnik, Deputy Director of Port Townsend and County Resident.
Carol Fletcher, and I have the Hadlock Realty, and I also have the Hadlock Motel. I'm working on getting 12 more units in there. I have a septic system that will handle it. It was designed to handle it. Now all of a sudden I finally made it through all this process. Now I have hit Linda Atkins, and I have come to an absolute dead stop again.
Craig Smith, Peninsula Video. I opened my little business 22 years ago today. And I've seen a lot of change in this town, and I like to see a continued growth in the center of East Jefferson County for the goods and services of the people.
Shapirska from the Leader.
I'm Bill Brock, representing Northwest School of Wood and Boat Building. We haven't participated in a lot of this. We've had a lot of our own activities going on, so we're trying to get plugged in to see what issues we need to be commenting on.
Sandy Mackley with Perkins Cooley. My office is in Olympia, but I represent Paul Christensen and the ownership group with the Baby Inn at Hadlock and the Marina, and very interested in the urban center and the sewer-related issues.
Tom and Francis Rosky, citizens concerned in the area and residents of Port Hadlock.
Douglas Joyce, and I'm a resident of Port Hadlock there for 40 years. Thank you.
Margaret Matheson. I live right behind the QFC on Masonic Hall Road. My main interest, we're opening this Sunday, 15 low-cost units for senior housing. But we've got room for 40 more units for family housing, and we can't put it in until we get a sewer. And if you get me started, I'm going to get mad. So pass it on.
I'm Ray Servan for the library, and Chuck Russell's going to do the talking for me too. Do you want us to just go over and start talking? Okay. I didn't prepare any specific statement. With the Jefferson County Library, we have expansion plans. People know that by now. They're very preliminary at this point. We just did an expansion master plan. And we hope that by 2010 to be building an expansion and a renovation of our building. We feel we can't do that successfully if we have to build more septic. We're at capacity in our septic right now. We would hook up to a sewer today if we could. We're ready to pay our share of what it costs to do that, and we need the sewer. And I guess that's my opening statement. I'll probably be reacting to what other people have to say.
Let's see, is there anyone that wants to go next? Or wants to? Larry?
You know, we're with the Port Towns, and we're a government entity, as you well know, and one of the things that government does very poorly is think ahead as to what the second and third and fourth order effects are to the policies and laws that we create and pass. And that starts down in Olympia with the legislature. It happens here in our county with our county commissioners. It happens in the city with the city council. And it happens in the port with the port commissioners. We do a very, very poor job. And I guess what I want to let you know tonight is one of those second, third, and fourth order effects that took place when the UGA suddenly hit a roadblock. The Wooden Boat Building School and the port combined into a partnership a couple of years ago to seek IAC. IAC is the Interagency Committee down in Olympia. It's a state committee that provides grant funding for a number of different marine-related activities, such as boat ramps. We applied for a grant so that we could purchase part of the boat building school's property for a parking lot. As you well know, our boat ramp in Lower Hadlock's in very poor condition. It's been there a number of years and in great need of repair and rehabilitation. It's about a $750,000 project. And the state was prepared. We ranked third in the entire state. And this is out of over 100 different applicants from other cities, counties, port districts, etc. The initial $93,000 was given. The building school agreed to sell the property. And what I'm talking about is right here at Lower Hadlock, across from the Ajax Cafe, and right next to the boat building school. As you know, they bought the property up here on the hill, the boat building school did, and they were going to sell some lost its ability for the rezoning and the use of that property. Thereby, they were not legally able to sell the property to us. Thereby, we had to go back to Olympia and give the $93,000 back. And the $93,000 was the seed money for the next year of over $300,000, which would have been the construction money to start building the new ramp facility, parking lot, etc. We would have matched it with our own local funds. So $750,000 project that serviced not just Port Hadlock, but the entire East Jefferson area for both commercial and recreational boating. Didn't happen and probably won't happen for a long time. These are grant funds that have to be applied for years in advance. So even if today the entire UGA was approved tonight somehow, it would be several years before we could get back into the grant funding cycle. And what really worries me is the fact that we've established a reputation up here that we just can't get things done. So the next time we go to Olympia, make our presentations, that's always going to be in the back of the minds of those people holding the checkbook down there. That, why should we tried to give these guys money before, they couldn't make it happen, why should we give them money this next time, knowing there's hundreds of other organizations around the state that need the money also. So it's just one more, it's a small example, admittedly, but it's an example that gets magnified many, many times as we go through our lives here. At some point, just as a citizen here, we got to get on with life. We're living like a third world nation. I've served in Somalia, I've served in Iraq, and 30 years in the military. We're still pooping in our backyard here. At some point, you get a sewer system and a drinking water system and just get on with it. We started a whole new century here a couple of years ago. We're still in the 1800s. So anyway, I'm gonna get off my soapbox. Thanks.
Thanks, Larry. I know Sandy's got his hand up, but I was going to ask if Bill Brock wanted to go since he's here at the boat school. Sure. I'd also like to say, too, that part of the problem that I understood with the boat school is that it's the way that we have to go through a conditional use process. Right. And with the Rural Village Center zoning, this is all based on uses and intensities based in 1991. There was no boat school, so it's conditional use in our table. We have tried to come up with a regulatory fix through the UDC omnibus, but it's stalled right now. So. But that is something we want to get through, is that it becomes a type 1 permit to make changes to conditional uses that are already established. So with that, I'd like to welcome Bill Brock.
I didn't know we were going to go back to conditional use. Basically, we had a conditional use permit in the middle when the UGA came by, and it was a couple of weeks, as I understood, from being approved, and which would allow us to be there on the property. The UGA, with the commercial designation, the school was the yes category. If you've ever looked at the table for uses versus zoning. And so we were a little upset. I did most of the work on the permitting, and it cost us some money, over $2,000 for the permitting process, which is not trivial to the school anyways. And so I don't know where we are. I guess we're kind of in limbo. We're there. Whether we're truly allowed to be there, maybe is something we could talk about. There's a certain uneasiness, obviously, in our mind in that scenario. We're just assuming that things will work out here in the long run. But the commercial designation of the UGA had its positives and its negatives as far as the school goes. And it did say, though, that we were allowed to be there in that zoning area. We had, when we purchased the property, rezoned the whole thing. Was half residential and half RVC. So it is all now RVC. Our future, it changes a lot. As a nonprofit, we're always looking for the next two nickels to rub together. And we have been retrenching and looking at that property. Larry's correct. We had a deal on the lower area there. It didn't come to pass. If that opportunity came up again right now, we would probably not be amenable to doing it. We have to look at the total use now for the acreage, And we've been looking at selling off part of it. We're thinking now how we really want to do that to reduce some of our debt. That's maybe getting too far into our problems. But again, as a nonprofit, we just don't have enough to do. We have a lot of good ideas. And as far as the zoning, we have enough septic to take care of our immediate needs. Growth-wise, it depends on what we do. Student housing, no way. As you know, the water rates go up for that, and so we couldn't really, even if we had the cash to put in some student housing units, which has its advantages and disadvantages, we wouldn't be able to do that right now. So the sewer would be better for us. Of course, the sewer brings up the whole issues of development and everything else, and I know a lot of you have different ideas on that. And like I say, we really haven't kept our ear to the ground on this issue. So seeing that it's raised its head again, it did cause us problems. First, we were happy because we had the commercial zoning and we were taken care of. Now, I don't know.
Keep it in the neighborhood because I work with Mr. Christensen, and you've got the marina and the old alcohol plant, and all which is the eastern edge of your UGA. We're very much in support of both the UGA and the provision of urban services. I've been doing land use work for 30 years and growth management work since the bill was passed. Involved in 2 non-city UGAs, including one specifically approved by the Growth Board. Provision of not only defining categorized by urban growth, but the second issue is providing urban levels of service. And one of the challenges you've got, of course, is sewer and water. Mr. Christensen, who is part of the ownership group here, very interested in bringing additional resort services to the area. We've got lots of invested septic tanks, and that's not the way to develop a first-class resort. So we very much want to support the sewer process, and happy to work with you in terms of bringing a capital facilities plan and a fundable capital facilities plan that can enable all of us to grow down in the area. So we're very much a supporter, and would very much like to work with you to achieve a successful result.
Mike, you want to go? Again, I'm Michael Durr. I'm with QFC in the real estate department. I work in the corporate offices, but I'm up here more and more frequently. We are in support of the UGA designation and the enhanced service to allow sewer services, urban level services. The QFC serves, the QFC just around the corner here, or behind us, serves from people from Polsbo to Port Townsend and beyond, which is wider than our typical area. And we are limited, we are not able to expand the store to a degree that we think would be suitable to serve that broad population. They're willing to make the drive. We want to make sure that they're happy with what they find when they get to the store. So until there's a solution, we're stuck with a physical facility that on the one hand, we have to keep safe and keep pleasant, to I guess, use a polite phrase. And on the other, do we make enough of an investment in it to know that it will have to last for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Next summer and next fall, we'll be putting some substantial money into the physical building. Some you'll see, some you won't. Roof replacement, for instance. Those are the kind of things you only notice when they fail. We try to stay out of that category. And the other is some major work inside to freshen it up and make it pleasant. Again, our bottom line is we think for the market we serve, the customer base deserves a larger store, and we would like to be able to do that at some point in the future. On a sort of broader planning note, and Mr. Mack can speak to this far more eloquently than I could, the downside of the UGA is, or a potential downside is, what will it do to Port Hadlock, and what does Port Hadlock want that end result to be? It can drive all the commercial development up to the highway and really take traffic out of the downtown area, or it can enhance what's going on downtown, obviously adding dwelling unit capacity, adding more people into the immediate market, we think is a great idea as well. So we're not saying one is right or wrong or better or worse. Obviously, we'd like to see people closer to our store and more people that want to come to our store. But as the UGA is discussed, refined, defined, considering what the second, third, fourth step down the road is and what that end product is going to look like, I think should be part of the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. A lot of common themes that you hear throughout this is septic, land capacity, just how much land that takes. Another is going to be the square footage limitation that's placed on there. QFC's mentioned that. The other is going to be the impervious surface area. Rural standards are usually more restrictive than urban. We work on code that's going to allow you to have more flexibility with your impervious surface, and there's a lot of low impact development stuff that we've been working on to try to allow people to do that, but obviously that only goes so far. Let's see, Joe, did you want to go next? Or go?
Let's see. I think this is our property now, where the lumberyard is. This is the property we have across the street. This has a 400-foot frontage. This also has a 400-foot frontage. On this piece of property, we want to put an up-to-date modern renter center. I would imagine right now we've got about 44 employees. I would like to see that probably get up somewhere in the low 50s. And as you know, the more money that we can bring in, I know last year there was times when we were sending the state about $71,000 in taxes just 1 month. And so there's a lot of tax money that we can generate and bring back to the community, which is extremely important, because without that, a lot of these things can't be developed. We have, as you see there, the 4 septic systems. Well, the area that we have to use to use these septic tanks is going to be money well spent for us when we go with the sewer, because it's going to be a lot of property that's going to be freed up so that we can use it for many other things. And you stop to think how much property there is being wasted because of the fact that the sewer system the septic system has to be there. So I guess we're looking at jobs, we're looking at usable space, and the growth. I think the growth in this community has got very, very strong potential, and I hope that we're part of it.
Thanks, Joe.
Well, my interest in the sewer as a business owner are obvious. I would be able to expand my food service at the tavern and have more employees. But I don't want to talk about that so much as I want to talk. I'm also a hospital commissioner, and we have for several years been talking about having a presence in the tri-area. We would like to have a clinic, probably a fairly large clinic in the tri-area, but we don't want to invest in that sort of thing the way things are right now, because there's no assurance we're going to have a sewer. We can't do more than have a small clinic, a couple of doctors, without having an assurance we're going to have a sewer here. But we would become very interested very soon if we had assurance there's going to be a sewer system out here.
Tell us about your plans, too.
By a little history? Well, the tavern's probably one of the oldest businesses in the county. It's been there for 53 years, 54 years, something like that. And we've owned it for 27. Been in continuous operation all that time. And providing employment for, well, a lot of single moms and people that may not have the skills and training to get a technical job, but earn a living wage out of it. So I think it's a very important part of the community. It's also a gathering place, and a lot of politics happen there. It would be more of a gathering place if we could have more food service.
There's also historically, one of the first major land use issues when it burned down, it was in Chimacum. And of course, when the teachers passed around a petition saying it's too close to the school. So,
Yeah, it burned down 50-some years ago, so it's older than that.
okay, so, Jim?
The first thing I'd like to say is kind of selfish in that I'm a county resident and I want more services in the county. I'm tired of going across the bridge and taking my dollars there, and I would like to see this UGA be successful. But I want to get on the public record because the port talked about an issue about 6-8 months ago that just never went anywhere. And as we look at land use throughout the state, one of the things we find is that most airports are in the UGA. And we have 400 acres of essential public facility about right there. And that can work to the community's benefit so much better than not including that 400 acres in the fact that we could have a sewer system at the airport and put a sewer system on an essential public facility, not take property off the tax rolls. We can work with the county in developing some of that stuff, and we can develop an airport that will service the community better than it's servicing the community right now. So I think that's what, I know no one wants to talk about changing that green line, but that's a big issue that I think should be looked at by the community if we're going to, in fact, go forward.
Okay, Craig?
Hi, I'm Craig Smith, Hadlock, Peninsula Video. I mostly came to listen and to get information. The question, why don't we have a sewer? We've been talking about it for, I don't know, Kyle, at your office one day, you showed me some stuff in 1969.
Yeah.
Years ago, 2/3 of the population of East Jefferson County was in Port Townsend, 1/3 was out in the county. Now it's way the opposite. People live out here. And as someone just said, a lot of that money's being spent across that bridge. And they kind of have to. Now with the Walmart and the Home Depot right there in Fallsville, it's real close. Now it doesn't really serve us. There are a lot of people here. Hadlock is not rural. And it hasn't been rural. When I came up here 22 years ago to open the first video store in Jefferson County, I looked over Port Townsend. Well, that might be a good spot to put it. But I liked it better out here. And you know what? They opened up 4 video stores in Port Townsend, and I'm doing okay out here in Hadlock. Now they got Hollywood Video. I don't believe that a sewer system is going to completely change the quality of life and the kind of rural aspects that the people who are attracted here and who live here want to retain. I think it's going to increase their quality of life, and their kids don't have to move away to get a job, that they can have more lower income housing, that people can come to town and get more goods and services. And really, I believe that because it's just inevitable we're having more kids or growing, it's inevitable that we're going to be forced to have a sewer system at some point. And it costs less now than to wait 20 more years to put it in. And it's really time, I think, to have a positive outlook on this. And yes, it's going to cost money. And yes, we need to come up with ways to pay for this. But it's inevitable. And it's time to be positive that we need to do this, that we're going to do this. And whoever's in charge, the leadership, needs to take charge and make sure it happens.
I just know you're going to have a few more kids.
2 grandkids.
Duke Schultz, born and raised in Hadlock. Now, we built Kibley Center about, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago. Craig came along there, rented from us. We're maxed out on size due to septic systems. Septics are my business, so I know a lot about it. And it's all due to, how much water you put in the ground in certain areas. We need a UGA.
Okay, thanks. Craig, would you like to say something?
Craig Durgan. I have a business in chemical storage. And I just recently, 1 month before they downzoned it, purchased this property here with the anticipation of putting commercial business in the front and industrial in the back. That's what the zoning was. And then a month later, it went away, and now I can put, I think, one house on it. And Duke has his cement plant here, and there's a bark yard there and a storage here, and it doesn't really make much sense to put a house there, in my opinion anyway. But I'll tell you one thing I see in my storage business. I see a lot of people that move here because they rent storage. And this area is growing, whether you like it or not. There's more and more houses going up, but you don't see the commercial. So what happens? People go across the bridge or they go up to swim. And they're certainly building in both of those places, Fallsville, Silverdale, and Swim. And they're sucking all the money out of our area. I just went up to Swim today. They got a lot of things up there. They got an aquatic center. They got a nice school with a lot of money they put into that school. Our children are suffering here because we don't have the tax money here to put in the things that we should have. That's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? We'll let Margaret talk if she promises not to get too upset.
Give it to her.
I'm an old timer. I've been here for 57 years, but my husband is even an older timer because he was born here 80 years ago. We look out our window to the house where he was born. Not many people can say that. We don't want growth. We want to keep it little. We want just us there. But I hate to tell you folks, it's growing. And if it's growing, you've got to manage the growth. And so that's why I'm for the sewer. We've got to have a tax base to support our school. We have to, we've got low-cost housing, like I say, we're opening the 15 low-cost senior housing Sunday, but we've got 40 units that we've got the plans for and everything to go on the same property, and we can't do it because no sewer. And don't tell me we don't need housing. We've studied this and studied this for 6 years. We need low-cost housing in this area. What else do I want to say? Can't think. Anyhow, it's just really important that we get this sewer. Oh, I know the other thing. We're studying it again. Spending all this money to study it again. We've studied it, we've studied it, we've studied it. Why aren't we putting that money that we're using for studies and put it into the sewer? We could have had our sewer by now if we didn't stop and have to study all the time.
Thank you, Margaret. Just take a quick break there, I guess, and let everyone know, where we're at. And I did bring, a visual display of, some of the planning work that's gone into this with, supplemental environmental impact statement, special study, 1994 community plan. Don't have the general sewer plan here. Don't have, I think I've got 3 of them at my office. They're, as old as 2 years ago, and then 1969. They're older than me. But yeah, I mean, it has gone round and round a lot. And the one thing I wish I really would have brought is a copy of Port Townsend Leader, and it's got 2 stories in there. And one of them says, Hollywood video coming to Port Townsend, ? And is the tri-area planning process repeating itself? And this paper's dated the year 2000. So I mean, this has been an ongoing policy issue for the county, and it's been a real struggle. But see, I'm seeing hands too. So who?
Kyle, I just wondering, are you done with the comments?
No,
I'm just checking in.
Okay.
Because I have a comment when you're done. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
And the other thing I wanted to mention too before Sandy had his hand up too, so just wanted to mention where we are with the sewers and why that has taken a long time. And basically, I mean, there's a little bit of timing that played into it. Part of it has to do with an election that happened in between that and a sort of a shift in the composition of the board. And there was sort of like, I guess a little apprehension, I suppose. But, I mean, the contract was signed after the final decision order came out from the hearings board and ruled that we were invalid. So, I mean, there was a little bit of waiting, too. So we got that decision towards the end of May. Then I think that we had the RFP out in a couple months. I think it was 2 months after that. And we had just now got the contract signed in December. And we're looking at having completed by end of March. Design, engineering, study that's going to be going forward, go to the Department of Health, and then construction would be the next step, is the way that I understand the plan. So things are moving. It's slow, you know, but it's moving forward. So Sandy?
Pick up on your final comment to us. Did I bring a wall at the table? The answer is yes. Then when it comes time to fund, we'll be happy. The other thing I'll join you with is as you get your plans in place, maybe work with you in terms of the compliance hearing, because the plant doesn't have to be built. And so as the planning goes, I was the attorney for Port Olympia for about 18 years, and I want to pick up on your comment. It is absolutely possible to draw a line around the airport, call it a UGA, link it to the capital facilities here, zone it for air industrial. Do not zone housing at the end of the airport, I have to say, you know. But you identify there's a need, it's a essential public facility, absolutely that qualifies, but you need to get it into your sewer plan so it's in your sewer service area. As a technical matter, Murphy's Law is, your map doesn't go quite far enough. There's a plat immediately to the east of the inn. Those are smaller lots, they're urban in size, they're currently on septic. If you included them in the UGA, zoned them at whatever density you calculate that to be, so there's no change in zoning or change in the plat, all of the undeveloped lots would come in on sewer, and that would help you, provide a revenue source and a capital base for your sewer. So, at the risk of changing the line, but been there, done that, and successfully defended it. Figure out where the airport is, draw a line around it as an industrial zone, because that will bring you in an economic partner. Mr. Christensen, an economic partner, bring in the houses, and that helps. Sewer needs capital and sewer needs revenue on an ongoing basis. Bring the lots in that are small enough, and those are prepared to pay for it.
Carol?
I'd like to respond to that. I sat on that board. And we tried very, very hard to bring some more of this in. We tried to get this is already built up, it's already platted out. They wouldn't allow that. They wouldn't allow Broder's Trailer Park back here to come into the UGA. It would have certainly brought revenue. They dropped them both out. We tried very, very hard to suggest that they bring in the Chimicum School. We tried to get the corners in down at Templeton's, and it just wasn't going to happen. And I know my poor little 9 acres, and I still complain about that. Somebody, it's 9 acres, it's already zoned 1 in 5, and somebody who drew the border on the UGA said, oh no, let's make it 1 in 20. So those are the kind of things that have struck us that have not gone well. The other thing is the sewer that I've thought, and just some of the everyday things that why we should have a sewer. Right now, I've got that sewer system, or that septic that I've got, is approved for 2,300 gallons a day. I took every receipt I have from the last year for my motel, and it comes out to, and the PERS and all of that, it came up to 1,275 gallons a day is what I'm using. And my calculation says that I have 1,025 gallons left over that I can use. When I gave that information to the county, to Linda Atkins, she said, I don't believe you. I said, here's the receipts. And she said, well, I can't tell that you've been full or your vacancy, so therefore I'm going to deny it. Well, now I've got to go back to the designer, and I've got to start all over again. And I don't think that's right. We definitely need sewers. So that's my point.
Thank you. Kyle, or to the Planning Commission, just can you make any general comment about likely sources of funds and percentages of funds, how those funds will be collected, what you need to get started, things of that nature, that to the extent you can make any comment on that right now.
Well, so I'll kick on a second. The general sewer plan that we did when we were going through the task force, we identified sewer systems that ranged basically between $8.5 to $15 million for the area that we were looking at sewering, which is shown on this boundary, and it's shown better on the map over here. But basically, I mean, we threw a couple different scenarios in there. I mean, we looked at system development charge versus doing local improvement district, a combination of both. There's always rates paid by operations and maintenance. I don't really have that off the top of my head, but I seem to remember, I think it was $1,500 an acre, I think, assessment district, and then your operations and maintenance fees beyond that. But I don't really have that information exactly off the top of my head. But we were looking at a lot of grants. We were looking at getting proposals, from the state, loans from the Community Investment Fund. Certainly there are other options available to local communities to come up with funding. So.
And the follow-up question, in your professional opinion as a planner, what would enacting the UGA as it's drawn right now result in terms of additional housing units, just from a residential standpoint, housing capacity?
That's a good question. I mean, there was certainly, Carol will tell you this too, I mean, there was certainly a lot of question raised about, the vacancy, and how much vacant land there was to grow in Hadlock. There were some assumptions made about, whether or not mixed-use development is a practical thing, whether we can be counting that. I would say the consultant at that time, really didn't think that was practical. Didn't think that somebody was going to come in and build, apartments above the storefront in Hadlock. So it's more like Belltown, kind of attitude. I mean, I don't know. I suppose from people that I talk to, it sounds more likely than that. I think that's something that needs to be looked at more closely. And I would say, it just depends on how the density goes too. I mean, there's plenty of areas to add density or to look for infill. But when we did the build-out analysis, it was more of a broad stroke that didn't really look at a lot of things like that. I mean, it was more of an entire capacity rather than case by case what's really available and what's really likely to be redeveloped. But I mean, there's certainly plenty of opportunities in there. I mean, being our trailer court alone, it could handle quite a bit of housing units, the airstrip up there and around the schools, all designated for higher density residential. So we were looking at accommodating 118% of our growth under that type of build-out analysis, which was, I think, just under 6,000 people total.
Thank you.
Kyle, the state budget this year allocated money for the cleanup of the Hood Canal, but it also allocated a pretty good chunk for cleaning up the Puget Sound, right? 250 million sticks in my mind. In order to get in on something like that, would we first have to prove that we were dirtying the sound, or that we were going to prevent ourselves from dirtying it? I would see that kind of money talked about. It seemed like maybe this would be an ideal source for us to go after.
Yeah, I don't really know about that. I would assume, we probably would have to start a problem before we got any money for that. But I mean, there are plenty of funding sources that have been identified through the general sewer plan and by other people who have been involved with creating that. And certainly, I mean, there's certainly less federal money than there was a while ago, but there's still money available.
Kyle, it was interesting. We sold a piece of property down in down by Shelton and down by Allen, and it had a sewer system. They didn't have water, but they had a sewer system. And I thought, well, that's real interesting that they would put their sewer system in and not provide water.
So I think Craig is kind of.
I keep wondering now, what's the current status of the sewer plan? And when the plan is done, what happens then? Is it going to go forward, or is it still subject to review, to appeal? Do you have any idea?
as far as I understand, it's, I mean, it needs to be approved by ecology, it needs to be approved by health. And I don't know about appeals in terms of, I mean, it's not like giving the comprehensive plan appealed, I don't think, so. It was my understanding once, you know, this was going to be moving forward, you know, it could be ready for construction after this phase was done.
I mean, like legal appeals, like this already happened.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that it is, you know, I'm sure that you can appeal any process, but I mean, I'm not sure how much, like, maybe, there's an attorney in the back, maybe we can ask, you know.
Let me have a quick comment on that. I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself to everyone before. I'm Josh Peters, also working long range planning. This matter, for those who are unaware, I have a feeling everyone here is aware, but the whole reason why we experienced the stall is due to a growth management appeal. So essentially the county took an action under the Growth Management Act, which was to designate all the internal land uses within the external boundary, which actually had been adopted for planning purposes in 2002. And we took this action in 2004 in the summertime to adopt internal districts and the zoning that went along with that, which is in our development code. That action was appealed, which is the right of any person or entity really within the system that we have here in Washington State under the Growth Management Act to a regional hearings board, the Western Washington Growth Management Hearings Board. And that case was consolidated with an appeal that happened in that 2002 designation in the first place. And so we're really dealing with this ongoing appeal, which has happened over the stretch of many years. In fact, if you want to go back to the 90s, the county originally designated the area as an urban growth area as well as other areas in the county and received an appeal back then. So this has been going on for quite a while, as was mentioned earlier. So anyway, that is on an ongoing compliance basis. So what will happen is that we're essentially operating, we're trying to do two things at once. One is just doing the planning for the sake of doing the planning because it needs to be done in order to put a shovel in the ground and build a sewer. And secondly, and right alongside that, we're trying to achieve compliance with the act of establishing a non-municipal urban growth area, or UGA, under the act, the Growth Management Act. So when we finish this capital facilities planning phase, we will be going back to that very same hearings board. There may be a few different members. It's a three-person board, and sometimes they change, but we're going back to that very same board, and we'll be making the very same arguments. Essentially, we'll be arguing that we've now done everything that's been asked of us, and the appellants will be arguing that we haven't. And then we'll have to wait to see what that board says. And so that it is an ongoing compliance process, but we're trying to basically do both things. Move along as we normally would move along anyway, towards sewer construction, and also on the side, and importantly, trying to achieve this compliance under growth management, which Mr. Mackey had referenced earlier, that he's been involved in similar types of situations in other jurisdictions, and it is difficult sometimes for a county to establish an urban growth area, even though the area itself can be looked at as characterized by urban growth in the first place.
Why is it, excuse me, but why is it that someone that doesn't live in the area can come and stop something like this?
It's the law.
I mean, it seems to me like if they don't live here, they have no business stopping what we want to do. But they have that right. And that's not fair. I mean, I'm not a smart person, but I've got common sense. And common sense says those of us who live here should determine what we get, not somebody from Port Townsend.
I just got to say something. Once again, I'm Joe Waddle. I'm from Mirstone Island. The lady she's talking about is Nancy Dorgan. Nancy Dorgan lives in Port Townsend. I live on Mirstone Island. She came out to the PUD meetings and went against us getting water out there. We were living like a third world country out there. So what she did is she got behind some people and they threw up everything they could as far as what would stick, what wouldn't stick, and they were going to go against us on the fact that the PUD had not done it properly, even though they were following all the rules and regulations. And then they were gonna go after the ecology. Well, at the last minute, when they threw up the lawsuit, which by the way cost the PUD $100,000, just went down the drain. They didn't have to put up a bond to say this is a frivolous complaint, but they withdrew the ecology portion of the lawsuit. So now, guess who goes in front of the board for the UGA? Nancy Dorgan and her crew on ecology. So now we're going to go right back to it, and you're alluding to the fact that there's going to be ecology problems.
Well, no, I wasn't actually. So I'm not really familiar enough with the process to say, where that could potentially be appealed. I mean, I'm sure, there's some legal way, like the way that she got involved with the water system and formation of local improvement district. I mean, there's always a process involved.
I guarantee you that's where it's going to come from. And I hope that you're prepared.
If I can just say one more thing, and it's kind of what I was saying about the second and third order effects that Olympia doesn't think about when they pass things like GMA. It's all good intentions, but when you actually get into enacting a law, this is what you get. Somebody who has very specific interests that are against the vast majority of other people's needs and wants. Just to go back to what Jim said earlier, just because I know there's some members of the Planning Commission that weren't here a year or two ago. The Port Commission did send a letter to the County Commission offering a partnership with the airport. Again, we've got the land there. We're more than willing to host the sewer facility. That saves the county money from having to buy other property. It keeps it out of somebody's backyard. We have enough land where you'll never know it's there. There'll be a green buffer around it. It'll be hundreds of yards from the nearest highway. And we can help with the funding. We have sources that the county doesn't have. We can do revenue bonds by state law, where the facility pays for itself. And of course, by, as we've already talked, adding more properties to the system, this increases those revenues, which means we can then bond even more money to build a bigger system. So we are a partner. We want to partner. If we can be of help, call on the port. Thank you.
This is just for information. There's a seminar that's going to be coming up. It's like a law seminar on the growth management. It is taught by several attorneys, and it is going to be on April 21st and 22nd over in the Seattle area. I've got all the information on it. But it talks about the GMA, where it is. Do they need to revisit the GMA? Is it working? Isn't it working? I thought, it's kind of an expensive seminar, but I thought it might be well worth it if anybody wanted to go. I've been thinking about going.
Josh, I think it would be helpful to clarify. One of the things about the Growth Management Board, it's a Mobius strip. It's an endless loop that you get in, but the interesting thing is if you stick with it, ultimately counties prevail in the end. And that's where I've been involved. I've been involved in more than a dozen counties, and I've probably been in 25 or 30 growth board cases. They did not invalidate the UGA boundary. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the UGA boundary is still here. As I understood the case, it said you can't put your zoning in place because you don't have a capital facilities plan to provide the services to handle the increased density. So as you have your capital facilities in place, plan in place, as you have a realistic funding capability, listen to this man about partnership, because the ports bring a great deal to the table. And by the way, it doesn't have to be contiguous. You can draw a line around it and then just link the two. And that's why I said I'm prepared to work with you on behalf of Mr. Christensen to go back into compliance. The Growth Board said, what the Growth Board said is you need these 3 or 4 things. And then your zoning's in place, because they didn't say that the zoning was not consistent with GMA. They said you couldn't put the zoning in place without an adequate capital facilities plan. So while it feels like you've been going backwards, you've actually been making good progress. You were missing a key piece. And as I understand, the contract is now out for that key piece. Now, a couple pieces of the puzzle. Talk to your state legislature and your governor about who gets to appeal. That was a decision made 16 years ago, and it's not going to get changed anytime soon. Anybody, if you can fog a mirror and hit the microphone, the state legislature has said you can file these appeals. And they do, and it's been old age and survivor's insurance for attorneys, and a nightmare for local government. But at the end of the day, you keep it up and you can prevail, and you're actually on the downhill side of that program. So, like I say, it's very important to understand your UGA is in place, your capital facilities plan is coming, and you go back to the growth board and compliance and said, we've got those, they say you're in compliance, you're professional petitioner, and I have them in 3 other counties, which keeps me quite busy. But if they file a lawsuit in the Department of Ecology trying to challenge the decision to approve the plan, this, that, and the other, that does not invalidate the plan. It doesn't stop you from moving forward. So you can start moving forward once you've got the plans and approvals in place. So the other is you just need to get aggressive against them. You've got new population data. The Board of County Commissioners gets to assign population in urban and rural. Take another look at your data. Thurston County just lost a case because it forgot to update its data between 1996 and 2004. So they're having to go back on the compliance. There's nothing wrong with urban growth boundaries. What was wrong was they hadn't updated their data. So they're all having to update their data. Dot the I's, cross the T's. You will succeed.
But you don't realize that they accepted us for 2 times. These people sued us. And we went to the board and we won 2 times. And then they sued us again and now we're back. So we are behind.
Well, no, I didn't say you're not behind. I'm just saying that you're on the downhill slope to finally winning.
Kyle, is there any truth to what, obviously there's always rumors out there going 90 miles an hour.
Sure.
One of the wonderful ones that we hear is that the commissioners are thinking about making the urban growth area smaller. And the reason for that is because the area now is too large to sewer. So therefore, if they make it smaller, that evidently the Corps evidently can pay for this. I'd hate to make it smaller. And I mean, is there any truth to that rumor, or is that just?
I haven't received any indication that was the direction they wanted to look at. I mean, they want to look at capital facility costs for the entire area within the boundary, and they are looking at the core as the 6-year first phase. So when the county comes up with its capital facility plan for the comprehensive plan, there's a 20-year plan and there's a 6-year plan. And a 20-year plan is, a forecast of needs that you're going to have over that 20-year period. And the 6-year plan is the same thing, except you have to show that you have the money for it, essentially. So, I mean, that's what they were looking at before. They were looking at the core as the 6-year area, and that was the map that I think that Frank brought to the chamber. But other than that, I would say that's just a rumor.
Okay, because they were going to eliminate everything off of Rhodey Drive.
That, again, no one said anything like that to me.
One of the tools you can use, we used it in Whatcom County. Those of you know Whatcom County, Birch Bay is an unincorporated UGA. And one of the things we had there was sewer and water serving a smaller part of the larger UGA. A tool that we used that was approved by the Western Board was a short-term, long-term boundary. And that is, here's the UGA, which is the ultimate service area. Here is the zoning, which is going to be in the UGA. And then inside the short-term boundary, which is all that was currently sewer served, the zoning was in place, and there was a lower density outside the short-term boundary until such time as sewer and water were in fact extended. But it was anticipated within 20 years it would extend. The problem with saying, well, you can only put in the UGA that which you can serve today means how can you use 20-year planning? Because the sewer plant's got to serve a larger area. So, and it also allows you to plan for growth. Growth Board has approved interim boundaries on a couple of occasions, and that may be a way of saying, here's an urban core that I'm going to serve initially, and here's the larger UGA, which has already been approved. As long as your plan's in place and fundable, they have approved it in 2 different cases. So that may also be a technique you can use.
What's interesting about that, Sandy, is just what ends up sticking with a hearings board. And maybe that's the best way to phrase it, because we have used similar concepts in other UGA planning. I mentioned before there were other areas. One of those areas was just outside of the city of Port Townsend, in Glen Cove, light industrial and commercial area. Has been called a PUGA at one point, provisional urban growth area, a FUGA, future urban growth area. Now it's just a LAMERD, which is a whole nother, let's not even go there, but this sounds like maybe a STUGA, and LATUGA might be better, the short-term and long-term UGA. You know, sometimes it's a matter of smaller jurisdictions like ourselves copying some of our larger brothers and cousins and sisters and what have you elsewhere because they've gone through it and maybe had more resources to go through that process first. So, thanks for the advice.
Out of curiosity, I've heard a lot of very positive comments from the public. Are there any in attendance that are against the UGA? I'd like to know by show of hand. Oh, okay. I see no hands. Thank you.
Doug, do you have anything you want to bring up about Hadlock Apartments or?
Not at this time.
Okay.
This is not a public, it's a discussion. So the next item on the agenda is the discussion on the 2006 work program. That concludes our discussion on the Hadlock Irondale UGA development. I'd like to thank everybody that came in attendance. We took close notes and appreciate all your comments.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you for hanging in there.
We appreciate it.
Take a 5-minute break.